Interested in that. We're now joined by Gary Ferman. He is, in fact, the managing editor publisher of Kane Sport, covers Miami. And in fact, Gary's been covering Miami for 40 plus years. Joins us, Paul, Craig, and David here on 365 Sports. Gary, I know Miami football and what they're trying to do has a huge attention. How much has this run in basketball caught the attention of Miami fans?
Well, first of all, thank you for dating me at the top of the segment for your audience. But no, it's catching the attention now. I'll tell you that. I mean, I'm not sure it caught much attention before, but when you make the Final Four, I think everybody pays attention, and I think the Miami community, the Miami fan base, is very much getting behind this team and taking more interest in what they've accomplished, which is just a phenomenal story. And the crazy thing about it is, as Miami goes to the Final Four, is you've got a school about 35, 40 miles up the road that was not even on the map at all as a basketball program that is also going to the Final Four. FAU has done a great job this year, and they got a very favorable draw in the NCAA tournament, and they played well, and they're going to the Final Four as well. So there's a lot of basketball talk right now in South Florida.
Gary, this is a team coming out of the ACC that was really wonky this year. Was there ever a thought, especially coming off the great year they had a year ago, they added a lot of guys in the portal, that maybe this was going to be a disappointment? Because as most teams rode to the ACC conference season, it was just, who is really, really good in this league this year?
Honestly, Miami was far and away the best team in the ACC this year. For people that didn't follow it closely, they had a couple bad losses along the way that you just shake your head. How did that happen? They lost a road game at Georgia Tech, which was the worst team in the ACC. Just didn't show up to play that day. Probably took it for granted, and ended up in a dogfight and ended up losing. But I think it was a very close game. And then they had a game later in the season against Florida State, which was kind of middle of the pack to second, third of the pack team in the ACC, and they played them at home. They had a 25-point lead and just stopped playing. And, these are kids, they're there's other things in their lives. There's, I don't need to go on and on in that regard, but they got up by 25 points in the first half of that game, and they just stopped playing, and they got caught at the end and lost the game on a buzzer beater from deep. Almost half court, I think it was. So they lost the game there. But most of the other few losses were on the road in the ACC, and those are tough games. You're not going to win every single game. I don't care who you are when you go on the road in the ACC, and most of them were 2-point games. There was one team the entire year that really beat them soundly, and that was Maryland on the road in the first month of the season. And beyond that, they played very good basketball, very consistent basketball all year long, other than those couple blips that I mentioned. But when people that aren't really that familiar with them, that aren't following them closely, look at the record and see those losses, their thought is going to be, Miami's not that good, or, like you said, what do you call it, wonky or whatever, or, Miami had a wonky season or whatever. People can use any word they want. That's what it's going to look like to somebody that isn't close to the situation. This is a very good team. This is a team that is built for March Madness because of the flexibility that they have with their players, and they can find ways to match up with just about anybody. They've played all different styles in the ACC throughout the year, and they got a game Saturday against a UCONN team that's very hot right now and playing very well. My personal opinion is that will probably be that the winner of that game will probably be the team that wins the national title. So, we'll see what happens.
Gary, what's it been like to see Jim Larinaga and the ride that he's been on, it seems like he's got the fountain of youth, but, just a fun guy to watch coach. Seems to be having the time of his life with this team as well. Obviously, this isn't completely foreign territory to him, but, when it comes to Miami, a lot of people immediately, as you well know, point to, well, NIL or whatever the case may be. You just talk about the job he did constructing this roster and how he's guided it along the way.
And there's a lot of ignorance there, too, guys. I mean, you talk about NIL. NIL is legal, okay? Everybody is doing NIL legally now. People have been doing NIL illegally for decades. And most of those are the schools that are complaining about NIL now because they don't have it all to themselves anymore. What's gone out of Miami, they picked up a couple transfers that were given NIL opportunities once they decided to come to Miami. And then a couple of the existing players got NIL deals. But there is not widespread NIL at Miami basketball. Like, there's plenty of players that are getting nothing right now. And, they've done this the right way. They've done a great job of identifying pieces and bringing in kids that will mesh with the other kids. And they put together a phenomenally gifted basketball team that of kids that love each other. They love playing for and with each other, and they match up very well against everybody. So other than that one game against Maryland this year, they have been a virtual impossible out for most people. I mean, Maryland was the one team that matched up very, very well with them because of physicality and size, and caught them on a bad day and beat them pretty soundly. So I think they will, with a week to prepare, have a very good game plan for UConn on Saturday. And UConn is going to have to play extremely well for 40 minutes to beat this team, because there have been two teams in the tournament, Drake being the first and then Texas the other day, that played exceptionally well for 3/4 of the game. And then Miami turned it up to a whole nother level in the last 10 minutes and won those games easily. So somebody's got to play very, very well to beat this team the way they're playing right now.
When did you think, perhaps as they hit the midway part of the second half, Texas just kind of always seemed to be up by 10? I mean, they controlled the game pretty much from the beginning. Miami continued to shoot at a high percentage. I think Miami cut it to 6, and then Texas had a run and alley-oop, and it's 10 again. When did you start to wonder if they had enough left in the tank? Because it does seem like they just eventually wore down Texas.
Yeah, I never wondered, and I'm going to tell you why. Texas lead was propped up by just a ridiculous level of three-point shooting. There was one point where they had a 7 3-pointer advantage on Miami. That's 21 points. And Miami was playing well, and they were shooting well also. The difference was they were making 2-pointers, and Texas was making 3-pointers. And I felt like if they could just adjust and start defending the 3-point line, which they did, that it would be much tougher for Texas, and that the shooting percentage would come back to earth. And it did to a degree. Both teams still ended the game shooting very, very well, but Miami started playing defense much better. They were able to force some turnovers, get some quick baskets, and the 11-point lead was down to 4 in about a minute and 20 seconds. Like, it happened very, very quickly. And then once they got to, within a better striking range at 4 points, now it's going to come down to being able to score and execution. And I felt that put Miami in a very good place, because that's their strength.
So if North Carolina was in it last year, and Duke was in the Final Four too, and Miami's in the Final Four now, why does Jim Phillips see the need to have everybody get together and talk about the perception of this basketball league?
Because the ACC has always been run by, the Carolina schools, and, it's not just about them anymore. Like, they're sharing the wealth with Virginia and Miami. Florida State's had some good teams, and they have the problem. If the ACC has a problem, is it's more perception than reality. The ACC is still extremely competitive, and all these teams are all very good teams. they're just not, Carolina and Duke just aren't able to dominate the way that they have, in years going back. And people equate Duke and Carolina dominating to the ACC being the ACC. But, you pointed out, they had two teams in the Final Four last year. They got Miami in the Final Four this year. The ACC is representing itself, very, very well. Miami was in the Elite Eight last year. So there were three teams in the Elite Eight last year from the ACC. I mean, that's pretty good.
All right, so spring drills, of course, beginning football with Cristobal in his second year. The thoughts, the expectation, where they are, how do you get a feel for what they're doing right now?
They're just working. They're just working hard, trying to get better. They're not running their mouths saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. When you go 5-7, you don't have a right to say anything about anything. And I'm very impressed with the work ethic I'm seeing. I think they will be a better team this year. I don't know what the over-unders are going to be in Vegas or whatever, but, I think that this is a team that can improve quite a bit this season from where it was last year. Is it going to win 10, 11, 12 games and contend for the playoffs? I don't know that they're there yet. They're working in that direction. Probably going to take a couple more recruiting classes. But I think they'll be improved.
Are you surprised they did not get into the transfer portal more for a quarterback?
No, they're actually pretty good at quarterback right now. Tyler Van Dyke is back as the starter. He's an exceptional quarterback. They have a backup by the name of Ja'Cory Brown, who was not very good last year, but he has improved his game. And then they have a true freshman, Emory Williams, who's looking very good in spring practice. Now, that said, if they could get a young quarterback to come into the program and compete with those other two young guys in the fall through the transfer portal, it would not shock me if they did it. Because, like you said, they got one guy that's really kind of proven. The other two, even though they're doing well in practice, you don't really quite know what you've got there. So we'll see what happens. It wouldn't shock me if there's somebody that wanted to come, but they won't reach for it for sure.
Gary, by the way, as a lifelong Nebraska fan, even though the last 10 or 15 years they've been irrelevant, where were you when they played Nebraska in that dramatic game that ended with the tip 2-point conversion from Turner Gill to try to win the game?
I was sitting up in the stands at the Orange Bowl. It was one of the most unbelievable atmospheres in football games that I've seen in all these years. I mean, you're talking about something that happened, 1983.
39, almost 40 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, you're talking 40, really 40, 40, almost 40 years ago. Yeah, so I remember it like it was yesterday. Thank God. I was sitting in the stands just watching this just magnificent football game, and it was something else. I'll tell you that. And obviously, it propelled Miami to phenomenal heights.
Paul, you want to ask him anything as a Florida State fan, since you lived through that a little bit too?
I mean, it's all the trauma I have in my life. But not that Bobby Bowden is not ever going to be thought of as one of the greats, but if not for Miami, and he said this many times, if not for Miami, there is so many other stories that could have been written about him. But because of a bunch of kicks, 3 wide rights and a wide left,
missed kicks. Yeah. Gary, it's been a great run. You got there and started with what you did with that website and covering them with what you've done for 40-plus years at the perfect time. Thanks for your time. Appreciate your knowledge. And perhaps back in August or so when we get there, we'll have you on again to talk more about football.
Anytime, guys.
Gary Ferman with us, covers Miami, Kane Sport on Twitter, with us on